How do you make your living?
As a counseling psychologist in private practice.
That's Dr. Leo Sprinkle.
Traditional counseling, marriage and family, therapy, hypnotherapy.
He sounds like a normal guy, right?
I was trained in formal logic.
In fact, if you listen to the show a lot and know how weird it can get, then maybe you're disappointed.
Philosophy and science and so forth.
But wait for it.
I think there's 3 levels of cover-up. There probably is a cover-up at the UFO level. I'm not sure, but I think there is.
And there we are.
I know there's a cover-up at the individual level because I've talked with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, and many of them had said, Leo, don't tell anybody.
On this episode of That Doesn't Happen Every Day, in which we interview everyday people about things that don't normally happen every day, we hear from Leo Sprinkle, whose curiosity about things he'd seen in the sky led him to start to apply what he learned about psychology and science in areas where the powers that were said he had no business in applying them, and then what happened to him when he did it anyway.
I said, okay, I'm a psychologist. I won't tell anybody unless you give me permission. I said, however, I want you to know that I'm talking about my UFO experience. You know why? And they say, well, maybe because you're courageous or maybe because you're stupid.
Dr. Sprinkle takes us to Colorado, where he had started studying psychology.
In 1949, I was a college student, sophomore at the University of Colorado. We looked up and we said, what's that? It appeared to be metal. It appeared to be moving from south to north over the Arts and Science building, Helms Hall. It appeared to me about the size of a fingernail at arm's length. It appeared to, without any sound. There seemed to be a little glitter of light. I couldn't tell whether it was internal locus or whether it was glitter off the sun. But it seemed to be like something was spinning, and it was like a blip, blip. And it was moving rather quickly, faster than airplanes did in those days. We knew that only kooks see flying saucers, and so we didn't want to talk about it to anybody else. For 6 years, I remained quiet about it. Didn't talk to other people. It bothered me, philosophically, psychologically. Then in 1956, my wife and I, Marilyn, we'd been married in 52, came back for master's work at the University of Colorado. And it was after the sun had gone down, so it was kind of dusk. We thought it was an evening star. Suddenly it began to move. Marilyn remembers it as going back and forth. I remember it as kind of a dipping motion. I stopped the car, we got out, and now the object of the light or whatever it was below the horizon, was below the Flatirons, between us and the Flatirons. Round, glowing, no sound. It hovered, and then it would move, and it would hover, move, hover, move and hover, and then gradually went north of town in the gathering darkness. And I looked in the newspaper, no report. I didn't know what to do about it. I talked to my colleagues. They thought it was nonsense. In fact, they didn't say so, but they implied, Leo, if you want to be a real scientist, you can't be a UFO investigator. I said, I want to be a real scientist.
You have to remember that when Leo had these sightings in the late 40s and then again in the mid-50s, people were a lot more shy about saying they had seen aliens. Leo continued to go to school and eventually earned his PhD in psychology, but he remained quiet about his experiences, and given incidents like what he's about to share, I don't blame him.
One professor of physics, he said, they do not obey the laws of physics. They come zooming in too fast. They stop too quickly. They hover too long. They don't emit the sounds that helicopters and airplanes emit. They do all kinds of strange things. When he pointed out that the UFOs just cannot exist because they do not obey the laws of physics, I had a notion to ask him, well, why don't we arrest them for disobeying the laws of physics? I stood up at the end of the talk and I said, have you ever had a UFO sighting? He said, no. This was in the 60s. He said, no, as if, of course not. I'm not crazy. And I said, well, have you ever investigated a report of a UFO sighting? Well, no, he hadn't. Now, if I'm a brick scientist, if I'm a cloud scientist, if I'm a sheep scientist or whatever, it's appropriate for me to study bricks. It's appropriate for me to study clouds.
I was thrown off by the brick or sheep scientist at first, but what Leo's saying makes sense. If you want to know more about something, why wouldn't you study it? With the dearth of UFOs or aliens to study directly, Leo started his research trying to work with people who claimed to have seen them. Anyway,
I decided to start a study in 1963, and I figured I could get 100 people to talk about their UFO experiences and fill out personality inventories. People would say to me, well, I'm not going to tell you about my UFO sighting. I said, why not? Well, because you're a psychologist, you'll think I'm crazy. I said, well, I've had UFO sights. Well, then you're crazy.
Despite their reticence, Leo was able to get information on 83 different people who claimed to have had some sort of UFO or extraterrestrial encounter.
And at the time, I thought, this is exciting. Here are 83 people who are willing to fill out personality inventories, talk about their UFO experiences, and lo and behold, on the average, they are, quote, normal, unquote, in terms of their personality profiles and their responses.
Just because people are normal, it doesn't mean that some of them might not lie on occasion, or that Leo's attempts to understand and get to know these people better might have missed a few of the ones that might be, well, not as normal. But given that there was this overriding cultural attitude that you had to be crazy if you saw a UFO, it sounds like what Leo was finding was going against that belief. Sadly, his findings didn't go down well. In fact, according to Leo, after presenting his findings, one organization even called him out, and then he had to
deal with the charges of inappropriate science.
According to the internet, inappropriate science means scientific research that is poorly conducted, biased, or uses flawed methodology to support a preconceived notion, often resulting in misleading or unreliable conclusions. Leo passed away a few years ago, and I don't have any specific info on the charges that were leveled at him, but he did do what he had to contest them.
I went through the year-long evaluation. I submitted my videotape, audio tape, a copy of my paper. It's like Galileo when he proposed, hey guys, let's look through a telescope and we can see the sun better and we can see the planets. The church fathers, who were the scientists of his day, said, no, we're rational. We will not look through a telescope. We will not have a new experience.
In 1633 Italy, Galileo Galilei, an astronomer and physicist, was put on trial for his claim that the Earth moved around the sun and not the other way around. In a nutshell, the church said a finding like this went contrary to biblical teachings that the Earth was set in the universe, and charged Galileo with heresy, placing him on house arrest until his death about 8 years later.
It's an example to me of how many people are upset by change in perception of the world.
It's weird how many times I've seen some members of the scientific community look down on religion, but you could argue in Leo's time it seemed like science had become the new religion, and in many cases it was making some of the same mistakes. Mark Youngie, who recorded this interview, points something else out about what Leo was up to and why it would make sense for him to do what he was doing.
Anybody in psychology would have a perfect and legitimate, a valid right to go in and talk to people who have had UFO experiences.
Right.
Because who better to understand these things than a person...
somebody who's trained in human behavior.
And to prove to us that they are really crazy.
Yeah, that's right.
They
So what happened to Leo?
At the end of the year, the committee unanimously dropped the charges, saying that they felt that I had behaved appropriately, ethically, scientifically. Every science goes through three phases. First, it's ignored, then it's ridiculed, and then it's accepted. So I tell people, I said, Leo, I'm going to be ridiculed. I said, well, that's better than being ignored, and it's better than being stoned to death. So in our science, it's appropriate for us to be ridiculed because UFO phenomena are weird. They're strange. They're crazy. And so it's okay for people to laugh, despite the fact that I've had troubles. There are a lot of people who are very open and supportive. The fact that we've had 12 years of our UFO conference here, and ours was among those that were willing to let people speak about their experiences and to provide support for them. Whenever someone got up to talk, we at first said no criticism and no clapping. But after a while, people started clapping just to say, we're glad that you had the courage to talk. Yeah. And some people have some weird, strange, silly, crazy stories. And some people may be crazy persons themselves, but the vast majority are middle-class persons who are sane, sensible, and who are looking for some kind of opportunity to talk about their experiences, to talk with others. And so they go away feeling like they have been received, not only socially, but psychologically.
Mark asked Leo one of the things that a lot of people who wonder about aliens ask. Why is it that so many people who claim to see them aren't presidents or world leaders or renowned scientists, But very often, everyday people like Travis Walton, who claimed to have been abducted when logging in Arizona.
Why the extraterrestrials or these UFO people don't come down to Kmart in the middle of the parking lot and say, okay, now I want everybody, come over here. We're going to have a little conference here. We're going to educate you people. Why don't they just do that?
Can you imagine the panic? Can you imagine someone who just came out with his new shotgun, with his shotgun shells with him? Pow! We are a race of individuals who will shoot and then ask questions.
What you're saying is you don't think we have advanced far enough yet to be ready for that kind of encounter.
Yeah. Either we would, the extreme would be, we'd either treat them as devils or as gods. Either one would be inappropriate. And so what we have to do is learn gradually, slowly, that they're around. And the way it's done is not to drop down in the White House or Kmart, but one individual at a time. One individual over here, one family over here, one person over here. They go through their panic, their terror, their fright, their anguish. They talk to other people who go through their fright, their terror, their anguish, their puzzlement. And these talk to others and talk to others. Gradually they start coming together. And then when the general public is educated to know through beer commercials and movies that ET is okay, then the evidence will be presented physically that will be acceptable to the educated scientific mind.
How far are we away from full contact, do you think?
Some people say that they think it's 2 or 3 years. I think it's at least 5.
I am not a UFO historian, and also you could debate what exactly full contact would mean, but almost 30 years after this interview was recorded, the Pentagon started to verify that videos which had been floating around online for years, some shot back in 2004, were legitimately recorded by military aircraft and were of unidentified aerial phenomena. Well, that might have quelled some of the debate on where the videos actually came from. Now the debate about what you're actually seeing in the videos, some people arguing drones or just airborne debris, continues to go on and on. Maybe that's a further testament to what Leo said about people not being ready.
People who do not know me, but who are interested in these topics, believe that someday this work will be regarded as pioneer work rather than as craziness.
Do you feel that same way?
I hope so.
I want to thank Dr. Leo Sprinkle, and I want to give another shout out to Mark Youngie, who recorded this interview. I want to thank the Wyoming Archives, who made Mark's recording of Leo available, and I want to acknowledge KHOL in Jackson for playing this program. If you've enjoyed this episode, please go online and do a search for That Doesn't Happen Every Day. Every day is 2 words in this case, podcast, and you can find all of the past episodes and listen to them completely for free. Thank you so much for listening. I hope to have another episode to you in about 2 weeks.